Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our third podcast. My name is Hamad, and I'm the VP of Product at Axia. Today we have with us, as usual, Yacine, CEO of Axia, data scientist slash neuroscientist. Um, and yeah, the topic for today is procurement, and I had somewhere the formal definition, Yacine, for us. Procurement is the act of obtaining goods or services, typically for business purposes. Yeah, that's according to Investopedia, but I guess if you ask procurement folks, it's much, much more than that. What do you think, Yasin?
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's a loaded word that is has a lot of sub modules. There's the sourcing part. There's
Yeah,
the contract management part. There, like it's a complex, more complex profession than it look like.
yeah,
So what we're going to check out today is like the procurement trend. We've seen a few that were touted at the beginning of the year. We're from what we've saw in the field while talking to procurement folks. I think it's a good time to kind of almost like a more than mid-year checkpoint to check out what were the trend that we think will continue maybe in 2023, 24, 25 that look like it's well solidified.
yep, definitely. So I have like six or seven listed here, and I guess you can go off and discuss each of them a bit in detail and see what's happening on this side. Cool. So the first one I have is increase in hiring of procurement people versus outsourcing procurement. Yeah, and I guess my 2 cents on this is like we've seen if you go to any major reputable manufacturing player in the industry, go to their LinkedIn page and you'll see these loads of procurement opportunities open, which they're trying to fill up. And so far, I would say not succeeding. You see jobs open for 200, 300 days and still difficult to find people to fill up that role. Why do you think so, Yasin? It's a, I mean, compared to what we were discussing in the previous podcast about like shop floor people, CNC programmers, this is a more glorified role, but why the hell is companies finding it so hard to fill this up?
Yeah, I honestly, I think um, procurement is the next software engineering or something like that. Like you've seen, like in 2021 ish, when it was the midst of the pandemic, like everybody was scrambling for like data
Yeah,
scientists and software engineer. And as time went by, they seen also that procurement was super crucial. I was looking at the LinkedIn post yesterday actually, from someone in procurement, a procurement professional, and he analyzed the search for the term like um, procurement and then procurement people and procurement hire, and he cranked it up like a lot. So I think it's on the rise, and with all of the client that we've met and stuff, and the struggle that they had, this role is now like a very very critical one, especially in an age of like disruption and stuff. If you can get someone senior that know how to navigate these sort of problematic, and especially in a recession, right? Because it's kind of look like we're gonna get into that.
yeah,
So if
technically,
you
yeah.
if you want to like maximize your buying and stuff, you need people that are the solid in this thing. So I think it's kind of a trend that is obvious. There's going to be much higher hiring for and demand for procurement people and procurement people with experience.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what is happening, and like a corollary of this is that if people are not able to hire them, they're gonna outsource and go to like what was the company? I think it was Emlat in Canada or something. It's just like
Yeah,
a outsourcing firm and some of some sort.
yeah, yeah,
We've seen them pop again and again, like they like shops that have this kind of supply chain procurement whatever agent that you can like get almost as a freelancer, as an intern or something like that.
yeah,
I think that they will get more and more popular. A
yeah,
bit like dev shops are,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The similarity between what happening was with software engineering and procurement is kind of
Mm,
similar, and I think it's because there's a big increase in complexity, and not everyone can do that. You kind of to do it well, you kind of have to have experience, and to have
yeah.
experience, you kind of have to have done it like a few times already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. And I think after what happened during COVID, it's sort of clear. Like before, if you imagine maybe pre-COVID, a procurement person, you would always imagine somebody who is like always trying to cut costs, and like that was the impression. But now, it's the attitude has changed. It's like now everybody views procurement as a strategic process that supports your business objectives. It's deeper than just getting like the lowest price or getting three quotes for everything. There's more dynamics to it, and I guess as supply chain becoming resilient is a priority for companies. These guys are the people who are on the ground. So if you don't have a good force there, then that's you're gonna run into problems. And I think one of the the company you mentioned, like there's also crazy kind of acquisitions happening. Accenture, Deloitte, hiring or sort of acquiring these companies that was doing consulting and procurement, which always is a good indicator for the market that this is where the trend is moving forward.
yeah, definitely. And the thing also is that I think like with the acceleration of all of the supply chain risk that have been piling up, like
Yeah,
when the pandemic started and it was a mess in the global supply chain, and everybody realized that for real we're all connected together. And then there was like cybersecurity attack, and there was like
yeah,
war, and all of this met like raw material shortage, supplier labor short, like all of these stuff piling up, and then you get these people that are on the this front line, and and they are have enough experience to navigate this mess, and then
yeah,
we have a
yeah,
recession on top of this whole thing.
yeah,
um they hold a very strategic uh, um, key role in the company, right? So I think this
yeah,
is why they're becoming like kind of central in these big industrial company. So on that specific trend, I think for the next 3 years, that's what
yeah,
will happen. Like the hiring, like
yeah,
there will be much more demand. There's going to be much more students studying like supply chain and procurement, and I think we're going to see like a revitalization of the role, to
yeah,
be a bit more tech driven, and then like being able
yeah.
to like crunch data in order to know what the hell they should be doing, with like this type of risk and this new type of risk that we never saw before. And
Definitely.
definitely, like there's going to be those outsourcing shop that will rise in popularity, a bit like the dev shops have been.
Right. Right. Cool. So the second point is my perception or the reason why I think procurement is becoming sexy, like software engineering, is the digitalization that's happening in procurement. I guess um, again, like how procurement used to be versus what it is now. We see increase in automations. We see vendor management becoming increasingly important. It's no longer about finding the lower price. It's about finding good online portals, good processes, business processes that are sustainable, that are automated. So I guess the whole digitalization element that is entering procurement is making it more from a from just a cost center for a company to a strategic partner for supply chain leaders to move forward. And that's where I see like the personally I see the highest evolution happening, and which is why it's making like those good or excellent procurement folks are rare currency for any organization to have, and they can't lose them to a point. Like they, as soon as this one person who's sort of driving the procurement leaves, the entire operation in some companies we've seen sort of like starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's what's spot on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, how do you see overall digitalization as a trend in terms of procurement, and what role do you think it's going to play in the second half of the year?
Honestly, I think like second half of the year, for sure that will increase, but like in the next 3 years and like forever, um, that's that's a given. I think like we can't, you can't run like um I've been reading report about like the supply chain and this supply chain 4.0 movement, that actually like was the term was coined in 2019, September 2019, like almost a day before the pandemic started. And then the pandemic started, and then like all the supply chain was disturbed. And McKinsey did like this cool analysis where they asked a bunch of like senior supply chain executive how they were doing, what they will do next during the pandemic, and then 1 year afterward, what's up, what they will, what they did and stuff, and what was the problem they encountered and stuff like that. And the companies that fared was like the one that already digitalized, right? Because they were able to navigate this mess. The
Yeah.
one that like were a mess and that almost like broke down was those that had very poor digitalization of their company with their procurement process. Because if you have a mega disruption on a global scale like this that almost look like a black swan event, you have no choice but to have visibility, like just like winging it with a bunch of phone calls and like looking at like paper that is on the desk, or like trying to talk to the guy that almost left in order to figure out, okay, which supplier do you know more and stuff like that. It cannot work. Like it cannot work in an environment where it's that messy and that complicated. And if you're in a mega organization, the system can be really complex. Like sometimes it's like the project manager that select the suppliers, right? How do you keep track of all of this mess, right? And why this guy select this supplier and not this one, right? And if there's a problem and some suppliers are popping off, right? And you're a project manager and you have to go to procurement to ask, hey, I want to have this person and this person. It's very difficult then to make good decision. I think like the trend of digitalization is software engineering again. Like if you look far back enough in software engineering, let's say like 10 years or 20 years ago, did everyone use like version control and then put their stuff so that they can all collaborate together? No, they didn't do that, right? It was all a bit messy. But right now, if you go into any company and you're like, oh, we're just gonna email us back and forth the source code, everybody will be like, what the hell are you talking about, right? How can you collaborate all together if you're not in sync and if the information is not at the same spot? And if you think about it, like the general tenure of a software engineer in big organization is like 2 years, and then they jump and they go into another organization, right? And when we see that procurement is in such a high demand, um, I think that's kind of also what should be expected. Like people won't stick, most likely won't stick forever. And what will happen if you lose this big person with like all of this industry knowledge and everything? Everything is lost. All of the tribal knowledge is lost, and you have to start from scratch again. So I think they will see much more like digital native procurement or operation where everything is digitally done. A trace is kept of what's happening so that you can better collaborate together. And then if somebody is leaving or somebody is getting added, then people can work together. And it goes to our last point about outsourcing of procurement. If you outsource procurement because you can't hire them and you have no ways of retaining the information, and then like there's a rotation in the outsourced procurement team, you're going to start from scratch again. Impossible. So I think the trend is like undeniable. The digitalization of procurement has to happen in order to navigate the complex world that we live in, and it will be just like almost natural selection. Like the company that are actually doing this well and putting effort into this, they will rise to the top, and everybody else that is kind of on the edge on this and don't want to to apply it, they will have a difficult time navigating like all of the disruption and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's this funny story. I mean, after COVID, some big companies had to call people out of retirement back to work because they had, like, that's when you know all of the digitalization
Yeah,
that you have been promoting in the media is a fluff. Like, there's no reality to it if you have to actually go and ask people to get out of the retirement, come back, because the knowledge is just so in the
crazy.
silos, which is like, that's crazy. Yeah.
Imagine like imagine this thing like Google is having a hard time, right, with like they have an outage. What they do, they call this guy that has been in retirement for 3 years and, hey, can you please come back? Oh, we have like the thing is out, it
Yeah.
doesn't work. We can't find like the talent for this. Can you just come in and then just help us out? That'll be good. Like what everybody would say was like, what the fuck are you doing, right? Like train people, do something, digitalize your stuff so that you don't have to rely on this guy.
Yeah.
This is what's happening, and you're right. Like thinking about it, we've seen in like multiple big organization, and when even seen like executive having to come back part time to help out a bit. That's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. It's I think it's almost unheard of in other industries.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Cool. All right. So moving on to number three, the shift in power dynamics with respect to suppliers. Yeah, my perspective on this is I think it's I mean we've like most people have sort of always known the Amazonian model where everything is the customer, everything is the buyer, the whole ecosystem revolves around the buyer. But something interesting is happening in manufacturing where it's like I feel like the equations are almost flipped now. I've seen some suppliers saying, "Hey, man, we're not going to quote on this. It's like it's beneath us." And there's some suppliers who are like not even responding, and
Yeah.
procurement dudes are just like pulling their hairs out of like, "What the hell? I want to give money. I'm the customer," and this guy just says, "Small shop somewhere in the middle of nowhere is saying, hey, sorry, I don't have time for you." So
Yeah, I don't have time.
that's
I'm on vacation. I don't. Yeah, but no, but this is crazy, and I didn't think it was like this. But like when I actually went and visited those shops, and I went there, and I looked at how much they didn't care that much about getting new business. I was like, what? Like, which industry you go, and they're like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm fine with the business I have. I don't want to grow.
yeah,
Like, this is good. I don't want to grow more. And then this big company is giving me more contract. I'm like, yeah, I don't like you too much. I like these guys that I'm working with. I'm just gonna keep working with them for the next like 2 years, and we'll see what's up, right?
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
kind of crazy. And I think we touched on that last podcast, but there's a complex dynamic of labor shortage on in these supplies. So they have no choice but to select, right? If there's more jobs than you can do, right? And it's urgent job for all of them. What you're going to prioritize, right? You're going to prioritize the
yeah.
highest bidder or this? No, you're going to prioritize the people with the most deep relationship that you have and the parts that
True.
you're making the best, so that you can
True.
maximize your ROI on your operation. Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to make like the most money out of your stuff,
Yeah,
your shop.
yeah,
So in these suppliers, we'll see what, especially in Canada and in Quebec, we'll see like an over specialization on specific industry or like type of part and stuff like that in manufacturing. But the need for like bending over backward for the buyer is not there. There's more job that they can do, like way more job than they can do, and they are the one that they are kind of in control in this case. So my thought here and what I saw was this, and I've talked to some suppliers in like big corporation in aviation, and it was saying to me like, in the last 10 years it always went up. The power dynamic, it started shift like 10 years ago, and then it started to slowly go up, but we reached a mega peak right now and it's not stopping, right? And if there's more shortage and if there's more demand from the customers, um, then the capacity of this, that is no there's like there's nothing that the buyer can do, right? Either there's going to be more suppliers that will expand, let's say North America or stuff like that, or a different part of the world, um, or the suppliers will need to figure out a way to automatize themselves to be able to have more bandwidth to balance out the market. But I feel like for the next 3 years, 5 years, maybe the trend will continue. The suppliers will have a lot of leverage compared to the buyer.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's it's becoming integral, and that's why the procurement role is so much in demand, because you need the digitalization skills, you need to have these people skills and relationship building skills, which in the past was like all the power was in the hand of the mighty buyer, and they could dictate whatever he wants or she wants. And now it's more of, you got to make sure that your supplier is happy and he's excited about you, and you're always on the verge of maybe he's not going to quote on this one, and then you could lose that business. Cool. All right.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Is that I think that's going to piggyback on the last point.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
So yeah, so last thing, I mean, is a surprising one for me, honestly, because I was expecting after the pandemic, people will just be like, hey, just let's get something faster from anywhere we can. But despite the pandemic, customers or buyers and suppliers still value sustainable and ethical sourcing practices, and sustainability target for all of like these big organizations are still there. And like this net zero, they want to get to this point of being ethically and have ethical and sustainable sourcing. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this? It
Yeah.
makes it even more challenging, if not less, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, because in this case, in order to hit the sustainability target, that if you look at most organization, there's a target for that, right? And there's conference that are like, this is hard topic. How we're gonna get those sustainability target? Because at the end of the day, the consumers, um, in most industry, that's something they value, and they're willing to pay higher price for this.
Yeah,
And if you look at the ROI, and there's multiple study on this, uh, there's an economical advantage of going for sustainability,
yeah,
because consumers are willing to pay higher price for something that is ethically sourced and then sustainable and whatever. And like if we see again and again the impact of climate change and things like that, this trend should not die out, right? It
yeah,
should just
yeah.
increase. So there's a pressure for this. And coming to the last point, who is manufacturing the stuff? At the end of the day, it's not the buyer, right? It's the supplier.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
on top of having to get good price and whatever, you have to make sure now that, like, as a procurement professional, that you're able to source these things sustainably and like ethically and all of this stuff. And you have to convince your suppliers that they need to meet those target. um, it's not something that you can. I don't think it's something that you can bully the suppliers into. Of course, you can, like, if like you have leverage and whatever, but like, hey, I want you to like reduce your consumption of like natural gases and stuff like that. Like, okay, why? What's in it for me? And like, if not, I'm not gonna
yeah,
get the contract. What's that? Like, it's become a bit too complex, and it's a bit counterintuitive here, because on one part we're talking about digitalization, and the first thing you think about when you talk digitalization and stuff is like bit of a colder process, right? Because if you have no digitalization, you pick up the phone, you fax people, you go see them, and then it's warm,
yeah,
right? But digitalization look like, okay, it's cold. We're just gonna like tack 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 and punch a bunch of numbers into the ERPs, and the MRP will send us stuff, and we're just gonna buy. But this is not what's happening. The digitalization part is to improve the efficiency of the procurement process and the suppliers, and to maximize the time, because there's a lot of inefficiency in the process. However, right, this is where it's a bit counterintuitive. Um, the relationship part will have a bigger role, because not only you have to ensure that your supplier will prioritize you when like problem hit the fan, but also that you can convince them to change the way they operate in order for you to meet the target. And then you have to do a
Yeah.
bunch of things in order to incentivize them so that it work. And this is very complex. And this almost look like um, the type of work you will hire a liar for, right? It's like
Right.
almost at this level of
Yeah.
negotiation stuff that you need
True.
to
True.
operate.
True. But like you said, I think in the start, it definitely pays back. We discussed geopolitical and natural disasters and all of those issues. I mean, it's a long-term investment, but it definitely you can see. I mean, I remember if you remember from the early days about this whole ozone layer sort of like thinning and going away. I think as humanity, we did a fabulous job of organizing ourselves together and getting this thing in order, and we don't see that effects today. God knows what would have happened if that sort of didn't work out well. So it's important, and you're absolutely right. It's also it kind of in the short term seems counterintuitive, but once I think we get, and again, it will not happen without digitalization. Because if you're stuck all day in understanding and you have no visibility over your suppliers, then best of luck with understanding where they're sourcing from and what are they doing.
Yeah,
So definitely,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're totally right because, like, at the end of the day, like all of the sustainability target and the stuff like that, they are based on trust, right? Uh,
definitely, yeah,
do you trust this person to actually say the truth about this? Because it's not operationally scalable to like go ahead and verify if all of these parts
yeah, yeah,
exactly like made in a sustainable fashion. Of course, you're gonna have some amount of certification and checking that you're gonna do, but fundamentally, it's based on trust. Do you trust this person to tell you
yeah,
exactly like how it's
right,
done for real?
yeah,
And if the answer is
true,
no, I mean,
yeah,
you can't you like having a transactional way of doing procurement and
yeah,
sustainability are those two things are fundamentally um, um,
true,
not reconcilable. You have to have a good relationship, and then you
yeah,
introduce the talk of sustainability in order to have
definitely,
something a bit more coherent. And
yeah,
I think the next an extra a bonus
hmm,
trend is more of a global understanding that cost is not the only thing, right? And I think
true,
it will
true,
just like self-select again. Because if
yeah,
right now in 2022, you're basing your procurement operation based on cost, um,
yeah,
amidst like multiple disruption of supply chain and stuff like that, you're gonna have a bad time, right? The quality
yeah,
will you're gonna get bad suppliers. You're not gonna get prioritized. Afterward, you're gonna get blacklisted. I've seen that. I've seen suppliers when
mm,
I visit them.
mm,
They're like, "Oh, this guy from this company, I'm never talking to him again." And I told all of
mm,
the other suppliers, and we don't talk to him again because he did this and
mm,
that, and he's always shopping from.
mm, right,
So at this point, if the balance is on the supplier side, if like there's always a trace of what's happening, if people are
yeah,
talking together and you're too transactional, this won't work. I
true,
think what we're going to see is a more holistic view about the procurement process,
yeah.
and that will lead to a overall better and stronger supply chain, I believe.
True, true. No, 100% agree. And I think like it goes back to our second trend, right? Digitalization. I see like there's this quote, I don't know who said it, is like, in God we trust and everybody else brings data. So I guess if you don't have that data captured properly, and if there's not enough tools or tooling that helps you capture that data in a way where you can analyze it, where you can see, then it's always going to be the last item on your list to take care of, because these guys are also running a business, and sustainability, of course they want to get that, but they need to free up this time to be able to go and work on that as a goal, or even be able to prioritize it. So I guess like the heart of it is like this data driven supply chain that we talked about in our first podcast. Cool.
Yeah,
So that's I wanted to keep this one short. Thank you so much, Yasin, for your time, and to all our listeners. As usual, please do leave us your feedback and subscribe. And if there's any procurement trends that you think we should be discussing or should have talked about, feel free to share them. Wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.
perfect. Thanks, Ahmad.